There comes a moment in life when the noise of the world becomes unbearable. The fake smiles. The empty conversations. The constant pressure to fit in, to explain yourself, to be accepted by people who don't even understand themselves. And in that moment, something inside you changes. You stop chasing crowds. You stop begging for attention. You stop needing approval from people who disappear the moment you stop entertaining them. And slowly, painfully, but powerfully, you begin to understand a truth that only the strongest minds ever truly learn. Alone is power. Not loneliness. Not bitterness. Not isolation born from pain alone. But solitude. Chosen solitude. The kind that sharpens your spirit and rebuilds your soul. The kind that forces you to meet yourself without distractions. Because the Stoics understood something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The greatest battle you will ever fight is not against the world. It is against the chaos within yourself. Most people are terrified of being alone. They keep noise around them at all times because silence forces them to confront what they've been running from. They fear empty rooms because empty rooms echo truth. But the Stoic mind is different. The Stoic enters silence willingly. Because silence reveals strength. Silence reveals discipline. Silence reveals character. Think about it. Every truly powerful person in history spent seasons alone. Not because they were weak, but because greatness is never formed in crowds. Gold is refined in fire. Minds are refined in solitude. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now. Maybe life separated you from certain people. Maybe the friendships faded. Maybe the relationship broke apart. Maybe you gave everything to people who only valued you when you were useful to them. And now you sit alone wondering if something is wrong with you. But what if this season is not punishment? What if it is preparation? The Stoics believe that adversity is not your enemy. It is your teacher. And solitude may be one of the greatest teachers life will ever give you. Because when you are alone, you begin to see clearly. You realize how much of your life was shaped by the opinions of others. How many times you stayed quiet just to be liked. How many dreams you buried because someone laughed at them. How many times you betrayed yourself to avoid rejection. And suddenly, solitude stops feeling empty. It starts feeling free. Because the moment you no longer need constant validation is the moment you become dangerous in the most beautiful way possible. A person who can stand alone cannot be controlled. A person who finds peace within themselves cannot be manipulated by temporary approval. That is why solitude terrifies weak minds. It creates independence, emotional freedom, mental clarity. The world teaches you to fear being alone because dependence is profitable. If they can make you desperate for acceptance, they can sell you identity. If they can make you afraid of rejection, they can control your behavior. But the Stoic refuses to hand over power so easily. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the mind becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Think deeply about that. If your mind is constantly surrounded by negativity, gossip, drama, comparison, and emotional chaos, your spirit slowly absorbs it. That is why protecting your peace is not selfish. It is survival. And sometimes protecting your peace means walking alone. There is a hidden strength that awakens when nobody is clapping for you. When nobody is checking on you. When nobody is motivating you. Because that is when discipline becomes real. Anybody can feel motivated when life feels good. But can you continue when nobody notices your effort? Can you improve in silence? Can you heal without announcing it to the world? Can you build yourself when there is no applause waiting at the finish line? That is power. Real power is not loud. It does not beg to be seen. The strongest lion does not need to remind the jungle who he is every minute. And the strongest minds move the same way. Quietly. Calmly. Intentionally. The Stoic understands that emotional control is greater than emotional reaction. Most people lose themselves trying to prove themselves. They react to every insult, every opinion, every misunderstanding. They become slaves to other people's words. But the Stoic mind remains steady. Because not every battle deserves your energy. You do not have to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You do not have to shrink yourself to make insecure people comfortable. You do not have to chase people who only value your presence when it benefits them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away in silence. And yes, it hurts at first. Growth often does. There are nights when solitude feels heavy. Nights when the silence becomes so loud it almost breaks you. Nights when you question your worth because the world trained you to measure value through attention. But those nights are sacred. Because every moment spent learning how to stand alone is building emotional muscle inside you. The Stoics believe suffering reveals character. Not creates it. Reveals it. When life strips away comfort, distractions, relationships, and certainty, what remains is who you truly are. And many people avoid solitude because they are afraid of what they might discover about themselves. But you must be brave enough to meet yourself honestly. Meet your fears. Meet your insecurities. Meet your wounds. Meet the version of you that still seeks validation from people who never deserved access to your spirit. And then heal. Not for revenge. Not to prove people wrong. But because your soul deserves peace. One of the greatest lies society tells you is that being alone means being unwanted. That is false. Sometimes being alone means you are evolving beyond environments that no longer align with your growth. Not everyone is meant to accompany you into your next chapter. Some people only knew the broken version of you. And when you begin changing, healing, becoming disciplined, becoming focused, they grow uncomfortable because your evolution reminds them of their stagnation. So they criticize you. They call you distant. They say you've changed. And maybe you have. Because growth requires change. The Stoic does not apologize for becoming wiser. There is a certain calmness that comes from no longer needing to impress anyone. Imagine waking up without the pressure to perform for the world. Imagine building your life quietly. Reading more. Learning more. Training your body. Strengthening your mind. Creating goals that nobody else even knows about yet. Imagine becoming so connected to yourself that external chaos no longer controls your emotions. That is freedom. And freedom is rare. Most people are emotionally imprisoned by opinions. One compliment makes them feel worthy. One criticism destroys their confidence. Their identity changes depending on who is looking at them. But the Stoic mindset teaches something different. Your value does not increase because someone praises you. And it does not decrease because someone fails to recognize it. A diamond remains valuable even in darkness. Remember that. You are not required to prove your worth to blind people. And perhaps the deepest lesson solitude teaches is this: your relationship with yourself determines the quality of your entire life. If you cannot sit alone peacefully, no amount of external attention will ever satisfy you. If you hate your own company, crowds will only distract you temporarily. But when you learn to enjoy your own presence, everything changes. You stop tolerating disrespect because loneliness no longer scares you. You stop chasing shallow relationships because peace becomes more valuable than attention. You stop settling for less because you realize solitude is far better than fake connection. This is why alone becomes power. Because dependence disappears. And once dependence disappears, fear loses control over you. Fear is what keeps people trapped in unhealthy relationships. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of not being accepted. But the Stoic trains themselves to become emotionally self-sufficient. Not cold. Not heartless. But grounded. There is a difference. The Stoic still loves deeply. But they do not abandon themselves for love. They still care about people. But they do not destroy their peace trying to save everyone. They understand that compassion without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You were not born to carry everybody's emotional chaos. Some people only know how to consume energy, never give it. And solitude teaches you to recognize that. As you spend more time alone, your intuition sharpens. You begin noticing patterns. You see through manipulation faster. You stop romanticizing potential and start observing reality. You realize that many people speak beautifully but live carelessly. You realize words mean nothing without consistency. And most importantly, you realize that protecting your energy is not weakness. It is wisdom. The world glorifies busyness because stillness leads to awareness. When you slow down, you begin questioning everything. You begin realizing how much time was wasted trying to fit into spaces where you never belong. How much emotional energy was spent trying to win approval from emotionally unavailable people. How many dreams were postponed because fear disguised itself as practicality. But solitude gives you perspective. And perspective changes lives. There is enormous strength in becoming your own source of validation. Imagine no longer needing constant reassurance to believe in yourself. Imagine moving with confidence even when nobody understands your vision yet. Imagine building discipline privately while others waste years seeking distractions. That is the Stoic path. Quiet mastery. Because true confidence is built internally. It does not depend on applause. It does not collapse under criticism. It remains steady because it is rooted in self-respect. And self-respect changes everything. When you respect yourself, you stop negotiating your standards. You stop chasing people who repeatedly show you inconsistency. You stop sacrificing your mental health just to keep temporary connections alive. You understand that peace is expensive, and not everyone deserves access to it. Some people lose access to you because they mishandled your presence. And that is okay. Not every goodbye is a loss. Sometimes it is protection. The Stoics often reflected on mortality because remembering death clarifies life. One day, every opinion about you will disappear. Every criticism. Every rumor. Every rejection. None of it will matter. So why spend your precious existence living according to the expectations of people who are equally lost themselves? Your life is too sacred to waste performing. You were not born to entertain the world while abandoning your own soul. And maybe this is your sign to finally stop running from solitude. Stop treating your alone season like failure. Stop believing your value decreases because your circle became smaller. A small circle with peace is worth more than a crowded room filled with hidden resentment. The strongest trees grow through storms alone. And maybe your storm is shaping you into someone unrecognizable. Someone calmer. Someone wiser. Someone emotionally unbreakable. Because pain changes people. But conscious solitude transforms people. There is a reason your spirit feels exhausted around certain environments. Energy matters. Constant drama drains the mind. Constant comparison poisons gratitude. Constant noise weakens clarity. But solitude restores you. It reconnects you with what truly matters. Your purpose. Your discipline. Your peace. Your soul. The Stoic mindset is not about escaping the world forever. It is about mastering yourself so the world cannot master you. There is a massive difference. You learn to enjoy solitude so that relationships become choices instead of emotional necessities. You stop clinging. You stop begging. You stop fearing abandonment because you already discovered something powerful. You survived your own company. And once you do that, nobody can threaten you with loneliness again. That is unstoppable energy. Imagine becoming so mentally strong that silence no longer intimidates you. Imagine no longer checking who viewed your life, who ignored your message, who failed to appreciate your effort. Imagine focusing entirely on becoming the highest version of yourself instead of obsessing over who failed to recognize your value. That is where power lives. Not in revenge. Not in proving people wrong. But in evolving so deeply that your peace becomes untouchable. And here is the beautiful part. The more comfortable you become alone, the more genuine your relationships become. Because now you choose people from alignment, not desperation. You stop attaching yourself to anyone who offers temporary attention. You become patient, intentional, aware. You begin valuing depth over quantity. And depth changes lives. Most people know hundreds of faces but cannot trust anyone with their soul. The Stoic prefers fewer connections with real substance. Real loyalty. Real honesty. Real peace. Because fake companionship is lonelier than solitude. Never forget that. Some people feel more alone in crowded relationships than they ever do by themselves. Because physical presence means nothing without emotional safety. And emotional safety is rare in a world full of performance. But when you learn to stand alone first, you stop accepting half-hearted energy. You stop settling for almost. And the world may call you distant for that. Let them. The Stoic does not fear misunderstanding. Weak minds always misunderstand discipline because discipline exposes their lack of it. When you become focused, people accuse you of changing. When you stop tolerating disrespect, people accuse you of arrogance. When you protect your peace, people accuse you of isolation. But you are not isolating yourself from love. You are isolating yourself from chaos. There is a difference. And the strongest transformations often happen quietly. No announcements. No attention. No validation. Just a person rebuilding themselves in silence while the world sleeps on them. Never underestimate silent growth. The caterpillar disappears before becoming a butterfly. Seeds disappear underground before becoming forests. And perhaps your solitude is not the end of your story. Perhaps it is the beginning of your becoming. Because there is incredible beauty in watching yourself evolve without needing witnesses. You become your own source of strength. Your own motivation. Your own peace. And eventually, something shifts inside you. The same silence that once felt painful begins to feel sacred. The same alone time that once felt empty begins to feel necessary. You begin protecting your solitude because you realize it is where your clarity lives. It is where your healing lives. It is where your power lives. The Stoics believe that external events are not fully under our control, but our response always is. Think about how much suffering comes from trying to control what was never yours to control. People's opinions. People's loyalty. People's behavior. People's understanding. You cannot control any of it. But you can control your mind. And that changes everything. Because the moment you stop trying to force people to see your worth, you reclaim your energy. The moment you stop chasing closure from emotionally unavailable people, you reclaim your peace. The moment you stop seeking identity through external approval, you reclaim your freedom. Freedom is powerful. And power built internally cannot easily be destroyed externally. This is why solitude becomes sacred for the Stoic. It becomes training ground for emotional mastery. A place where you sharpen your thoughts instead of numbing them. A place where you confront your habits honestly. A place where you build resilience while others seek distraction. Most people are addicted to escape. Scrolling endlessly. Talking endlessly. Distracting endlessly. Because silence demands honesty. And honesty can be painful. But growth requires it. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot become unstoppable while remaining dependent on temporary validation. At some point, you must decide whether your life belongs to your purpose or to people's opinions. And that decision changes destiny. Because once your purpose becomes greater than your desire for approval, your focus sharpens. Your standards rise. Your discipline deepens. You begin moving differently. You stop announcing every plan because you understand that energy is precious. You stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you because your peace matters more than being right. You become calm. And calmness is power. Not everyone will understand your transformation. Some people only benefited from the version of you that lacked boundaries. They preferred you insecure because insecure people are easier to control. But healing changes dynamics. Growth changes access. Self-respect changes relationships. And that makes some people uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. You are not responsible for shrinking yourself to preserve other people's comfort. Never apologize for evolving. The Stoic path is lonely sometimes because self-awareness separates you from environments built on unconscious behavior. You stop enjoying meaningless conversations. You stop entertaining drama. You stop tolerating dishonesty. You begin craving depth. Peace. Purpose. And not everybody can meet you there. That is why your circle becomes smaller as your mind becomes stronger. Because growth is selective. And solitude teaches you discernment. There is tremendous power in knowing you can walk away from anything that destroys your peace. Not because you enjoy losing people, but because you finally value yourself enough to stop tolerating emotional chaos. The Stoic understands attachment without wisdom leads to suffering. So they love with awareness. They care without losing themselves. That balance is rare. But it is life-changing. Imagine becoming emotionally strong enough to enjoy your own company more than toxic attention. Imagine reaching a point where silence feels richer than superficial conversation. Imagine no longer fearing empty rooms because your spirit no longer depends on noise to feel alive. That is inner peace. And inner peace is one of the greatest forms of wealth. Most people spend their entire lives chasing money while neglecting their minds. But what good is success if your spirit remains restless? What good is external achievement if internally you are still controlled by fear, insecurity, and emotional dependence? The Stoic seeks mastery within first. Because everything external can disappear. People leave. Money changes. Status fades. Beauty fades. But character remains. Discipline remains. Wisdom remains. That is why solitude matters so deeply. It reveals what remains when distractions disappear. It reveals your true foundation. And if that foundation feels weak right now, do not panic. Every strong mind was once overwhelmed. Every disciplined soul was once distracted. Every emotionally powerful person once struggled with pain, loneliness, fear, and uncertainty. But they chose growth over escape. And you can too. Maybe right now life feels unfair. Maybe you feel abandoned by people you trusted. Maybe you feel invisible. But listen carefully. Some of the greatest transformations begin in seasons where nothing makes sense. Sometimes life removes people because your future cannot survive your old attachments. Sometimes isolation is divine protection disguised as loneliness. Trust the process. Even painful seasons carry wisdom. The Stoic does not waste suffering. They study it. They learn from it. They use pain as fuel for awareness instead of becoming bitter. And bitterness is important to talk about. Because solitude can either make you wiser or colder depending on how you carry it. If you allow pain to poison your heart, isolation becomes prison. But if you use solitude for reflection, healing, discipline, and growth, it becomes power. You must choose carefully. Do not become cruel because others hurt you. Become wiser. Do not close your heart completely. Strength is not emotional numbness. Real strength is maintaining your character in a world that constantly tests it. That is true Stoicism. Not suppressing emotions. Mastering them. Understanding them. Refusing to let them control your actions blindly. The world mistakes emotional reactions for strength because chaos is loud. But composure requires far more power than anger. Anybody can explode. Few can remain calm under pressure. Anybody can seek revenge. Few can choose peace. Anybody can follow the crowd. Few can stand alone confidently. And that confidence changes your entire life. Because when you stop fearing solitude, manipulation loses power over you. People can no longer control you through attention, rejection, or emotional games. You become emotionally independent, grounded, clear-minded, unstoppable. Not because life becomes easy, but because you become stronger. The storms still come. The betrayals still happen. The disappointments still hurt. But now you are rooted differently. You no longer collapse every time life tests you. Your strength comes from within, not from circumstances. That is why alone is power. Because solitude teaches you how to survive yourself. And once you master yourself, the external world loses its ability to shake you so easily. Imagine the version of yourself waiting on the other side of discipline. The version of you who wakes up focused instead of anxious. The version of you who protects peace instead of chasing attention. The version of you who values authenticity more than popularity. The version of you who no longer abandons themselves just to keep temporary people comfortable. That version of you already exists. Solitude simply reveals them. So stop seeing your alone season as empty. Some of the most important work happens invisibly. Trees grow roots before branches. And roots determine survival. Your solitude is growing roots. Mental roots. Emotional roots. Spiritual roots. And one day people will see your calmness and mistake it for luck. They will see your discipline and mistake it for talent. They will see your emotional stability and mistake it for ease. But they will never fully understand the silent battles you fought alone. The nights you chose healing instead of destruction. The moments you stayed disciplined when nobody was watching. The pain you survived quietly. The habits you changed privately. The tears nobody saw. The prayers whispered in silence. That is real strength. Not performance. Not image. Character. And character is built when nobody is clapping for you. The Stoics often reminded themselves that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. How much of your life has been controlled by fear that never even happened? Fear of rejection. Fear of judgment. Fear of loneliness. Fear of failure. Fear steals more dreams than failure ever will. But solitude forces you to confront fear directly. And when you confront fear long enough, something amazing happens. It loses its grip on you. You realize you can survive alone. You realize you can rebuild. You realize peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from controlling yourself. That realization changes everything. Because now your energy stops leaking into meaningless distractions. Your focus deepens. Your standards rise. Your purpose becomes clearer. You begin respecting your time because you understand life is temporary. And temporary things should not control eternal values. One day this life will end. Let that humble you. Let it wake you up. Stop wasting years trying to be accepted by people who are equally confused themselves. Stop shrinking your soul to fit spaces never designed for your growth. Stop abandoning your peace to avoid temporary loneliness. Choose yourself. Not selfishly. Wisely. Because nobody else can live your life for you. Nobody else can heal your mind for you. Nobody else can protect your peace for you. That responsibility belongs to you. And perhaps that truth feels heavy at first. But eventually it becomes liberating. Because if your peace depends on you, then your future is not controlled entirely by circumstances. You have power. Inner power. The kind nobody can take. And that is the power the Stoics spoke about. The power of self-mastery. The power of remaining steady while the world becomes chaotic. The power of discipline over impulse. Wisdom over reaction. Purpose over distraction. That is the mindset that makes you unstoppable. Not arrogance. Not ego. Alignment. Alignment between your thoughts, actions, values, and spirit. And solitude helps create that alignment because distractions fade away. You hear yourself clearly again. You rediscover what truly matters. You remember who you are beneath everybody's expectations. Maybe this message found you for a reason. Maybe you have spent too long believing your worth depends on how many people choose you. But listen carefully. The world's inability to recognize your value does not reduce it. Some people overlook diamonds because they are too distracted by glitter. Do not confuse attention with value. The Stoic understands that external praise is unstable. Today people celebrate you. Tomorrow they criticize you. If your identity depends on public opinion, your peace will always remain fragile. But when your identity is rooted internally, you remain steady through both praise and criticism. That steadiness is rare. And rare things are valuable. So protect your mind carefully. Guard what enters your spirit. Not every environment deserves your energy. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your heart. Boundaries are self-respect in action. Never feel guilty for protecting your peace. You are not difficult for refusing chaos. You are not cold for valuing solitude. You are not arrogant for outgrowing dysfunction. Growth often looks lonely before it looks successful. Remember that. There will be moments when people misunderstand your silence. Let them. Explaining yourself endlessly drains the soul. Not everybody deserves your deepest thoughts. The Stoic knows silence can be more powerful than unnecessary words. Silence protects energy. Silence protects clarity. Silence protects focus. And focus is dangerous in a distracted world. Most people never reach their potential because they scatter their energy everywhere. Too many opinions. Too many distractions. Too much emotional chaos. But solitude concentrates energy. It allows you to think deeply, build patiently, heal honestly. That is why some of the most powerful transformations happen away from public attention. Because true growth is intimate, sacred, private. And maybe your life is asking you to slow down right now, to disconnect from noise, to stop seeking external answers for internal battles, to finally sit with yourself long enough to understand your own mind. Do not fear that process. Transformation always feels uncomfortable before it feels empowering. The caterpillar probably thinks the cocoon is the end before becoming something entirely new. And maybe your solitude is your cocoon. Maybe life is stripping distractions away so your real self can emerge. Stronger, calmer, wiser, unstoppable. Not because you became emotionless, but because you became emotionally disciplined. And emotional discipline is one of the greatest superpowers a person can develop. Imagine remaining calm while others panic. Remaining focused while others chase distractions. Remaining kind without becoming weak. Remaining peaceful without becoming passive. That balance is powerful. The Stoics knew that inner peace is not built through comfort. It is built through awareness, discipline, and perspective. And solitude sharpens all three. So if you are alone right now, use this season wisely. Read more. Reflect more. Pray more. Train your body. Strengthen your mind. Build your habits. Reconnect with your purpose. Because one day the same solitude that almost broke you will become the reason nobody can break you anymore. And when that day comes, you will move differently. You will no longer beg for attention. You will no longer fear rejection. You will no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as connection. You will no longer betray yourself just to avoid temporary loneliness. Because you finally discovered something the world rarely teaches. Your peace is priceless. Protect it. Your energy is sacred. Protect it. Your mind is powerful. Train it. And your solitude is not weakness. It is preparation. The strongest version of you is not built through constant comfort and endless validation. It is built in silence. In discipline. In moments where nobody sees your effort except you. That is where resilience is born. That is where unstoppable people are made. So the next time life places you alone, do not immediately assume you are being abandoned. Sometimes you are being redirected. Sometimes the noise must disappear so your soul can finally breathe again. And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, subscribe to the channel and join this journey towards strength, wisdom, peace, and self-mastery. Because in a world addicted to noise, choosing discipline, clarity, and inner peace is a revolutionary act. Stay strong. Stay disciplined. And remember this forever. Alone is not empty. Alone is power.